Alright coders, this one is probably the most fun program on the lower grade coding contest challenge for this year. It's going to be called Catch the Cake. And so the way this program is going to work is we want a cake sprite that follows the mouse cursor around. So as you move the mouse, the cake will go where the mouse does. And we're going to add another sprite of a girl that's going to try to catch the cake. And so the sprite will move around to try to catch the cake. And the point of the game is to keep the cake away from the girl. And this program will introduce movement, looping, randomization, sensing, and I think that's it. We'll see. Okay, first thing we want to do, since we're going to do a cake theme, let's have a cake party background. So come down to your backgrounds button. Let's choose the one called party. Now, of course, you can always change this and pick whatever one you want. So our party background is ready to go. Let's add a sprite. You can see I've already gotten rid of the cat one there. We don't need him this time. And let's grab this one called cake. Alright, so here we have a sprite on our stage here with a background. Looks fun already. I don't like the size of this cake. I think it's a little bit too big. So look down here. When we're clicked on the cake sprite, we can change its size. Let's change that to, say, 70. And you can see when you hit return how the size of the cake shrinks already. So the cake has a really simple set of instructions that it's going to follow. Let's think about it for a second. What we want to happen is when you hit the green flag, we want the cake to go to where the mouse cursor is. So we first need an event. That's this when the green flag is clicked. And think for a second, how many times do we want the cake to go to where the mouse is? 1 time, 5 times? We probably want it to go to where the mouse is all the time. So we're going to go down to Control and going to grab this one here that says forever. So this is a forever loop block of code, which means whatever we put in here is going to go from top to bottom over and over and over again, as long as the program is running or until we hit the red stop sign button. And inside here, it's just one more piece of code here where it says motion. We want to move the cake. So we're going to use this go to. Now there's different go to X's and Y's and glide and all that. The interesting thing is we don't know where the mouse is going to be at all times, so we can't just put numbers in here. So we're going to let the program figure that out for us. So this block of code here that says go to random position is a sensing tool where it can figure out where we want it to go. Now we don't want it to go to a random position. If you hit the green flag, see what happens? Forever and ever and ever, it just goes to a random position. That's what random means. There's no pattern to it. Well, we don't want that. We want there to be a pattern. And so we're going to switch this by clicking on that little down triangle, change that to mouse pointer. See what happens when I click the green flag now. And you move the mouse around your stage. The cake follows the mouse. Now that should make sense to you. I'm going to click the stop sign because we're telling it when you click the flag, forever, go to where the mouse is. Does that make sense? Should make sense. Okay. So that actually part of our program is done. That's exactly what we want that sprite to do. But we need another sprite. So come back down here to choose a sprite. And let's pick one here called Casey. Casey, it's going to be our cake chaser. And I think Casey, that sprite is a little bit too big. So let's change that to, let's say 60 as well. So I'm on the Casey sprite, clicked on size, changed it to 60. You can see how that's pretty good with relation to the size of the cake. If we wanted to make this game really hard, we could make Casey really big. Or if we want to make it really easy, we could make the Casey really, really small. You'll see what I mean later on. But let's think for a second. We want this sprite to chase this one. Now, some of the code from the cake is going to be similar here. We want it to start when the green flag is clicked. So on the Casey sprite, on the code window tab, we're going to come over here where the green flag is clicked. We want her to chase the cake as long as the program is running. So we're going to grab another forever loop. And let's test something out right now. Under motion, what would happen if we go to the exact same code as we did for the cake? Instead of go to random position, and we switch this to mouse pointer. You'll notice too though, if you change on that, now the program senses there's something else that Casey could go to. You could just say go to the cake. We don't want to do that though, because that's not a very fun game. That's just two sprites that go everywhere the mouse goes. Let's, instead of going to the cake, we don't want it just to go to the cake. What we want to do is we want that sprite to move toward the cake. So I could put over here move 10 steps, but that'll take wherever the sprite is and just move it. But we want it to move towards the cake. So actually, before we run the flag, let's grab this one here. So we're under motion, and this one says point towards. And instead of point towards mouse pointer, let's have that point towards the cake. Now think about this code. Forever, point towards the cake, and then move 10 steps. We're going to do one more thing here before I hit the flag. This set rotation style, left, right, you're going to want that on this program. So drag that over here. That only needs to happen once though, so don't put that inside the forever loop. We're going to set the rotation left to right, point towards the cake, move 10 steps. Now watch what happens when I hit the flag. I move the cake, and that Casey sprite follows the cake. Our game's about done. You could stop right there if you wanted, and you've got a pretty good game that little kids would like to play. Notice what happens though. I thought you might want to understand this one. If we switch this to all around and click the flag, watch what happens to Casey. That looks a little weird. I mean, she's doing cartwheels or something. So let's switch that back to rotation style left and right. I think this works better. Now, you know what would be fun would be if we change the way she looks while she's chasing the cake. So let's click on looks. Now, it doesn't really matter which costume the sprite has, but let's just have it change costume. So inside this forever loop, let's drag over this one. We're under the looks options. We're just going to bring over next costume. And now if we run the program, do you see how she's chasing the cake? That looks pretty good. Let's talk about making the game easier or harder. This move 10 steps I just dragged over, but we didn't change that a little bit. What do you think would happen if I changed that 10 to a 1? Look at the code. Set rotation left to right so it doesn't go silly. Forever, point towards the cake, move 1 step, and then change the costume. So, do you see how slowly the sprite is moving now? That's probably a little bit too easy. So let's stop the program. And if we change that to 100, that's probably a little bit too hard. How are you going to keep the cake away from a sprite that's, every time it loops through there, it's going to move 100 steps? So maybe we want to find a nice balance between those numbers. I think 5 steps might be a good one as it moves around. Okay? It would be better if something happened when Casey caught the cake. So let's add in something here inside of the Casey sprites forever loop. We're going to do, this is a control question. We want to check every time inside this loop if it's touching the cake or not. So we're going to grab this one here. It says if, and there's a little bit of a diamond, and we're going to put something inside that diamond, but basically we're going to say if something happens, then do something different. Inside this operator, sensing, inside sensing, so grab sensing, there's one of these options you can pick, touching color, if different colors are touching, if it's close to the mouse, there's different things we can do. We're going to grab this top one. If touching mouse pointer, but we don't want our game to end when it touches the mouse. We want to click on this little down triangle and say when touching the cake. So if the Casey sprite is touching the cake, then we want something else to happen. Well, let's have something happen. Let's go under control, and if you scroll down a little bit, there's one here that says stop all. That means if Casey gets the cake, then the program is going to stop. And let's see what happens. Do you see what happened there? I didn't have to click the stop sign there. That little bit of code stops the program all the way. Now, the problem now is you can't just restart it, because if you restart it, you'll notice they're still touching. As soon as you restart it, it stops again. So I mentioned at the beginning we were going to include something called randomization in this one. I want these two to start in random spots each time you hit the green flag. So can you think about how we might do that? It's going to be motion. Look through here. Do you see what would be a way where we could have the sprites go to a random spot each time we hit the green flag? This one right here, go to random position, will do the trick. So let's drag that onto both of our sprites. Go to random position, and let's click on Casey and go to random position. Now you'll notice on the cake one that go to random position is kind of silly because as soon as it goes there, it's also going to go to the mouse. But we may change our code later on for this, and having the cake always start in a random spot just might be a good idea. Okay, so stop it, go to a random position. Now every time I hit the green flag, Casey's going to start in a different random position. That'll be nice because every time she touches the cake, the program stops. So now we've got a game, and that's what happens. Now let's have one more thing. Let's click on Casey, and let's say if Casey get really excited to win the cake, or to catch the cake. So before the program ends, let's have Casey say, "I got it," for 2 seconds, and then the program will end. Let's see what that does. Now, did you notice that the cake moves around even though Casey stops and is talking? I think that's perfectly fine. All right, that is Chase the Cake. Let's come up here and call it that, or Catch the Cake. Catch the Cake. And that is a really fun game I think we can make where you're dealing with movement, looping, sensing, random locations, and animation. I hope you have fun playing this one. If you're done with it, see if your little brother or sister can keep that cake away. And good luck.